Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get Real with Jack and Cindy. I'm Cindy
And
Morrison.
I'm Jack Wallace. Glad you're here.
You know, I've got a kid graduating college.
Ugh. Hey, no more college tuition.
And I'm so proud of her. She's heading on to OSU Tulsa Med School.
More college
So
tuition.
exactly. So I am not getting a raise yet, but a lot of people going through changes right now with kids graduating high school and college, and
Yeah. My dogs are good.
yeah, my labs are like
Yeah.
same day, same
Mhm.
difference. Although they will be very excited that Marlo is coming back home.
Is she going to live with you during? Oh wow.
Yeah, so probably the first year she's going to PA school.
So how are you about that?
Oh, I love it.
Oh really?
She's like my best friend.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
good. That's
yeah.
good. Nothing against Marla. I mean, a lot of times people have gotten used to like having the house to themselves and kind of like, wow, yeah.
I think if she was going to be working and not going back to school, I'd be like out.
Yeah.
But that's a nice little savings right there to not
No.
pony up some
Isn't that,
rent
and
for
isn't
her.
that nice to have a house that she can do that?
And somebody will finally live upstairs again.
And
There's
you're
this
not
whole
paying
half of my
rent.
house I
You're
never
not paying
see.
any rent. She's going to be living there. Yeah. So that's good.
So we'll probably do that maybe for a year and then.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. She's super excited. I'm super excited. All right. I'm also excited about what we're going to talk about today.
This is an exciting topic.
Whether to buy new or old homes.
Yeah.
Pros and cons to both.
And I think it's important, like when we're talking about this, we're talking about new homes. That's obvious, new construction. Then there's newer homes, which are a few years old. And then there's old homes and then really old homes. So, I mean, there's like a scale of all this. So we're talking kind of generically about kind of new construction versus older homes.
Mhm.
And, when we're talking about this, we may throw in some things that are a little bit more about particulars about some of those things. But, new construction, we've done new construction and we've talked about that, but we didn't really talk about why you would do that over an older home or why you would want an older home over new construction.
Well, and I think there was some hesitancy about new construction because it cost more by the time you put in the fence and the drapes, and it was just more expensive to build your own home.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily the case anymore. Houses have gone up a lot.
Yeah, but I still think that in general, when you're apples to apples, it's probably new construction. The prices are still on the higher side
Because they're new.
Because they're new, yeah. But I mean, you're also getting, that's kind of like if you buy a new car compared to buying a 3-year-old car, or is it a 25-year-old classic car?
Right.
So like I think that's when it's houses, it's kind of the same thing. There's some of the houses that are really great areas, very established, well maintained, well designed, that happen to be 50 years old or 60 years older, that people pay a premium for because they are in established areas with beautiful trees, with great landscaping, with updated kitchens, all those things. So it's not really fair to say new construction, and then new construction has a variation because you have lower end new construction, which is just to get people in a house,
that starter home.
And then you have, really nice, really expensive new homes that have every whistle and bell and in beautiful areas.
I love all the whistles and bells.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. And there are a lot of whistles and bells you're not going to get, in other homes. It's very interesting though, because my house was built in 1959 and was built by a very wealthy attorney, not very wealthy, a wealthy attorney at that time. And they just decided to do everything that was brand new, all the newest technology. And some of the things like I've had to redo over the years because they have like a solenoid electrical system for the lighting, which was like, this interesting clicking.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. But
Yeah.
It was like, but it's, it's outdated now. But it's sort of funny because at that time that was the equivalent of like our highest tech thing. So some of the stuff that we put in these houses, thinking this is going to be great forever. It's kind of like wired speakers. Remember,
everyone had now you have Sonos.
And now you have Sonos. I mean, so it's like you have to be a little bit careful with some of that. It can be something you really want, but is it going to be a value add for the rest of time? That's kind of another question. But I'm off subject. So let's talk about.
So let's talk
imagine
about
that.
first the pros of buying a new or a newer home. A lot of times it's going to be that open concept, that new design or the latest design that's really popular.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be, materials that are more in keeping with what everybody is wanting now. Countertops, wall coverings, all that is going to be, and then just even the energy efficiency of the windows and the doors and the insulation. The spray foam insulation is a really big one. It's been going, and that's been happening for a while. So, I think that's something you can get in a little bit older home still, but it makes a huge difference. It really does. I would kill to have my house have spray foam insulation. Like
mine is just not new enough for the spray
yeah.
foam, unfortunately.
So so those kind of things. But the open concept is a really big one. The one thing I will say on that is that I sometimes get people kind of like that are into older homes that go, every new construction feels like the same floor plan. And there's a point to that. I think it
Some
does.
builders build 200 of the same homes.
Yeah, and you
year.
walk in, and there was like the office to the left. You walk to the hall. There's the open living with the kitchen. That's kind of the plan that a lot of people do. So there are variations of it, but to a lot of people that feels a little bit like everybody else's house. So I think, but in general, most people, that's what they're wanting is that open plan.
The only time I heard complaints about the open concept was during COVID, when their kids were home and kids were having to do on-school learning and people trying to work from home. That was the first time that I heard people say, I wish I had that house like I grew up in that had separate rooms.
And you know what? I'm actually seeing more of that online where people are talking about they don't want a dishwasher going when they're watching a movie. They don't want, I think it's turning a little bit. I think it's hard to give it up though. I think it's very hard to give that, that open feeling up.
In our household, where I grew up in Lubbock, there was the kitchen and the den were separate as they would have been. I think the house was built in the early 70s, but there was a big cutout where mom could still watch TV with dad and me, which is, of course, the idea behind open concept. You're all able to enjoy entertainment and still talk.
But she's watching through a window. What's the world happening on there?
But that was kind of cutting edge then, because those rooms were supposed to be separate.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a house that's hexagon pods, and I'm not lying.
It what?
Hexagon pods.
Really?
Yeah. My mom still lives in it. It's cool, but it was so the living room had a hexagon kitchen. To the
Interesting.
to the side. Yeah, it's very so it kind of open but not kind of galley, but around it. So yeah. It's sort of funny. Whenever I was growing up, people go, "Do you want to have a house like this when you grow up?" And I just go, "I want a house with 90-degree angles." My bedroom was shaped like a grand piano. It's and it's cool. I love the house. I absolutely love the house. It's really, really cool. But it's just my dad was a builder, and they kind of Asian and kind of contemporary look. But
so it was feng shui before.
So I grew up in a very unique house. So when people go, I just want something a little unique. I'm like, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, when you buy new construction, less maintenance.
Yes,
you're going to have a newer roof. You're going to have a newer air conditioning.
It's a fresh start. But the other side of it is, there are things that, again, depending on the construction and depending on the quality, is it a builder quality heat and air unit, or is it a really high-end heat and air unit? You can't just assume that because it's new construction that everything is going to be equal as far as that goes. But certain things like your roof is brand new and there should be a warranty on that. Your windows are new, there should be warranties. You have so many things. You have the builder warranty for a year.
Yeah, that's next on my list, because if you're buying that new construction, that you're going to have things that that pop up, and you've got that warranty.
Yeah, and again, that's Oklahoma. It's not everywhere, but in Oklahoma,
and both of our
state
builders.
law. Yeah, it's state law. The builder provide a 1-year comprehensive warranty. So covers covers, any kind of defects of material or installation or labor. So it's really good, except I don't know if yours does, but it doesn't count plant material.
Oh, probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's something at the beginning that's a problem, but like if people forget to water or don't water, he's not going to cover it. That's fair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Energy efficiency. The newer your home, we just talked about spray foam, the more it's going to be energy
The units
efficient.
are more efficient. Yeah. The windows are more efficient. Sound is a big deal.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that's something you don't think about, but sound with the spray foam and with the windows, even it's interesting, like house that used to be close to a busy street used to be, I mean, it still isn't always the easiest sell, but it used to be really hard to sell them. But now a lot of the homes, the spray foam and the newer windows and doors, then you don't hear it when you're in the house. Very little
I'll
noise.
tell you new construction that just blew me away. And I'm not going to remember the name, but there's a new, it's not apartments, they're condos, high rise right over there by Canes. And it's near highways. The type of glass that they used, literally you
all the difference.
Open it up and go outside on the patio, and it's so noisy, and you close it, you can't hear a thing.
I even think it's funny whenever I'm sitting on open houses in a neighborhood that they're building, and they had their music blaring and the guns going, shooting nails, and I don't hear it at all when I'm sitting in the house. And then somebody opens the door to come into the open house, and it's like you hear that, and then they shut the door, and it's like it goes away. So yeah, it's very interesting how that really does make a huge difference.
And customization, and if you're building new, just being able to go in and pick out your tile and your carpet and your colors and how the elevation of the house looks. By the way, elevation is the drawing of the front, side, backs of the home.
And also the customization part depends on the type of, like if you're buying a house spec, if you're doing a custom, if you're doing a semi-custom, which we talked about. You can go back and refer kind of what the differences are in our podcast that we did on new construction. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, or if you don't, even if you don't get to pick them, you're picking the package that the builder has done that has all the newer looks that people want typically.
Yes.
So yeah.
Also immature landscaping, and I think of that as more for new construction, not a newer home. My home was built in 1989 and the trees are humongous, but I think of that as a newer build.
Cindy,
is it not new anymore?
1989 is an old house. Sorry. I know that's when we were graduating college. That is now an old.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, yeah, it's 10, 30, 35 years ago.
Okay, you just dated us as well.
But I'm saying that's what happens. This goes back to everything we've been talking about. Like it goes really fast, right? It does. And so like you think about that and you go, man, I bought a newer house, but like over time.
Because I kind of think of South Tulsa as being the new construction, and the Bixby, Jinx, and Midtown being older construction. But now you have people, taking it down to the ground.
It's actually very interesting because when John and I first started selling in Midtown, the houses were, I remember thinking, this house is almost 100 years old. This is crazy. And now I go south and they're getting near that. Like, I mean, it's kind of interesting how, like, or the houses were 50 years old or 60 years old. And now I'm finding that in South. So it's like the house. And I remember back in the day, we'd think, well, these houses, it's just harder because you have so many things that can go wrong over, and now you're seeing that in South. And then in Midtown, you're seeing a lot of new construction because like you said, they're just, it's better to at time take the house away and build something new and just start over. So yeah, it's all sort of switching around, but I think but yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes. I mean, my mom grows up. My mom lives in a house I grew up in, and we moved to that house when I was in kindergarten. We
moved into our Lubbock house when I was in kindergarten. Same thing.
So, I mean, think about that. So she's been there all these years. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
All the memories, all the things, but it's like also she's maintained it. She's redone it. She's kept it going, kept it up, so.
Deferred maintenance will kill an older home.
Oh, yeah. Quickly. And water, any kind of water infiltration, always stay on top of it.
A lot of times people say a con to maybe not necessarily new construction, but newer construction is that there's no character. Like you said that earlier, like they all look the same.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting though, too. Like you kind of have two different buyers. I mean, I tend to be a character buyer. I do like a
I
little
do
bit of
too.
character. I do like, I kind of want that. I like history of homes and kind of, um, that's what I think it's like. You just think about our house when we bought it 16 years ago. There had been one family who lived in it for 6 months, but other than that, it was the attorney and his family, and they were Jewish, and they had never obviously had. I mean, obviously, but I don't think they'd had a Christmas tree. And then the people that were there for that short time, they weren't there during Christmas. So when we put up our Christmas tree, we were thinking, this is so interesting. We're probably the first family to put up a Christmas tree in this house,
Huh.
but it's been here all these years. But then they celebrated Hanukkah or Passover. Like, I mean, it's just so interesting. Like, it's the life you bring to the house, but the life that the house has already had, and the history of it. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Or like, what are there were like nicks on the in the baseboards on certain areas that were like, I kept trying to figure it out. And then I went to another person's house that was in a wheelchair, and they're the grooves from the wheelchair,
Oh,
like
I was thinking
hitting.
tricycle or
Yeah.
something.
And so there was like, that's what it was. So whenever he was older and in a wheelchair, and he would hit so like for all that time, I was wondering, what are those little grooves? So to me, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, now those are gone, and we put new base where I put new baseboards on, but it was cool. It was like, oh, that's what that is. Yeah, it's kind of the history of it. I like that. But a lot of people hate that. I mean, like, they want that new car smell. They don't want to live in somebody else's anything. Like, yeah.
I have one friend that every time she buys a house, she has to replace all of the toilets. She will not use
I have a lot
a
of clients
toilet.
replace the toilets and the
Really?
carpet. Yeah.
Oh, carpet,
Yeah.
totally makes
Yeah,
sense
I
to
have
me.
no carpet. I have all hardwood, but yeah, I can understand that. But
Yeah, but toilets. I just
Yeah.
found that very interesting.
Which is interesting because does that mean you don't use a toilet anywhere else? Like,
Yeah.
just saying.
So
That's great control if you do, if you're not. But
okay, pros to buying an older home, definitely that character and charm that we're talking about.
yeah, and also, the other thing too is that home has a history of standing right where it is and being in good shape. The one thing people go, oh, if I buy a brand new house and I have no worries for it, well, that's not necessarily true.
Right.
Because you're still building it on soil potentially that has issues. You can have movement. I mean, like, there's all kinds of things that can happen with a newer house that you don't expect. It's very rare, and that they do everything they can to prevent that. But with an older house, it's like it's been here in Oklahoma through hot, hot, cold, cold, wet, wet, dry, dry, tornadoes, whatever, and it's still standing and doing well. So it always makes me laugh whenever we go to inspections of like a house that's like 110 or something years old, and people are like, well, it's not bad for an old house. I'm like, oh my God, if I look this good at 110, I mean,
you're sitting pretty.
they outlast us if they're well maintained. I mean, go to the East Coast and go to Europe. I mean, like, they're houses that are 500, 600 years old. I mean, like, yeah. So it's just keep it up.
That's awesome. Established neighborhoods. The trees are going to be big. The landscaping's going to look pretty. It's been there for a long time.
And, neighborhoods go through phases too. Like, I think it's always interesting because it's sort of like, I think about the house that I grew up in. This may be the same case for you. Everyone's sort of stayed there for a long time, raised the kids. And then when the kids started going off, then people started selling. And then, like, some people stayed, some went. When some of the houses started getting kind of in bad repair, some were, really well maintained, some were redone. And then eventually most of those people have sold, and now it's new families with younger kids, and they're redoing the houses. I mean, so like, the neighborhoods have like a real interesting personality. I always think about it like when you see the people walking their dogs in your neighborhood, like, and you see, like, in my neighborhood, it's a lot of older people and a lot of younger people, and there's kids. I like that. I like that variation.
The diversity.
I like that. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I do. And I think sometimes in the newer neighborhoods, it'll be a little bit more generic, of the type of person, a little bit more. I mean, I don't think it's that much difference, but it does seem like a little bit more like retirement people
Mhm.
aren't going to be necessarily in the neighborhoods that have like the big houses and the newer houses, but they may be more in like, my 50s houses.
Yeah, we had a really good elementary school, May Murphy Elementary, right down from our house. And so that neighborhood has always stayed very popular. In fact,
Yeah.
it's in like its third or its fourth wave of kids coming
It's
through.
an interesting secret of real estate. The elementary school is about the most important thing when it comes to a neighborhood. I mean,
Yes,
it really
it is.
is because people, the high schools, they can kind of go to private, they can do, but those elementary schools, people really kind of want a neighborhood, nice, good elementary school
And it
for
helps for
sure. Because
resale if you
that's what a lot of my neighborhood is. That
Mhm.
yeah.
Which elementary school are you near?
Oh my gosh, I'm. It
I'm
starts with a C. Oh my gosh.
sorry, you would have known if I hadn't asked.
My gosh. Okay, let's move
We're
on.
yeah,
It'll
we're
come back to
we're
me.
Darnaby, and I just
Darnaby is like
I
great.
loved my kids
Yeah,
going there
yeah,
to Union. Yeah.
yeah. I'm literally going to be
Sometimes
barbecued over that.
a lot of times the lots are bigger with the older homes.
Yes, that is true. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and um, it's interesting too because it was for a long time people were moving more south to get larger land, but then so it's kind of always interesting. Like people have sort of that mindset that when they go to like when they go south and they come to see open house, they're like, well, I thought going this far south, I'd get a larger lot, and it's like, no, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when we were even in high school and college, that was why people moved further to the suburbs was to get more land. But now those suburbs are the more established neighborhoods. Yeah.
And it seems like I've generally had clients that didn't necessarily want a pool, didn't necessarily want land. And since COVID, all of that has changed. I've shown more land than I've ever shown before, or
Yeah.
houses that are on an acre or two.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting too because it's like that always seems to go in phases.
Mhm.
People do that, but there is a big rural like that. That's a new trend where people kind of
Yeah.
want to be out raising their chickens, and not me. I do not want chickens. I don't want. I do not.
I want to
But
be close to Trader Joe's and Target.
yeah, I
And
mean, I love going to other people's and seeing it, but like for me, that's not my thing. But that is a very, that's a very common desire now to do that.
so when we talk about the cons of buying an older house, I mentioned earlier deferred maintenance. If people haven't kept up with the maintenance of that home, the damage that can be caused um, can be a mess.
Absolutely. And when it's easy, it's insidious. I mean, it happens a little bit at a time. That's even like right now, I'm having some of the soffits in my house, they're wood soffits,
Mhm.
and it's that 50s roof line. And so on the corners, over time, the water is just sort of rotting some of that soffit out. So I'm having to have some of that repaired and replaced and then checked to make sure it doesn't have water up. And it's like, those kind of things that it's just over time it just happens. So I think, but it's like if you let that go, then it keeps moving down and traveling down, and then suddenly you go from a little problem to a really big mess. So yeah, it's a really big deal.
Yeah. The outdated layouts, energy efficiency, kind of some of those things that were the pros to a newer house. Let's see. Those are kind of the pros and the cons that I have. I I love older homes. I absolutely adore them. Gotta have a bigger closet. Just gotta have a closet, and more of the open concept is what I like. But now my feelings are really hurt that I don't have a newer house. I thought I had a newer house. No, I got an
I
old
mean, it's
house.
not an old. I mean, mine's 30 years older than yours, but I mean, like it's just interesting because it's and that's what happens to us. I think we just we live kind of thinking, well, that wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's just sort of interesting to me how quickly time goes by.
Yeah.
It
We
really
we moved in
does.
23 year. Well, no, we had to moved in earlier than that. We must have been here 26 years because Peyton is 25. So 25 years ago. And I think, well, that didn't seem that long ago. And then I think, oh, I've raised 2 kids since then.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's like it's beautiful that we've had all that experience and time and memories.
Yeah.
You're not
I'm
buying that.
devastated. My house was newer than I thought it was. I was thinking mine was on the newer side, but no, it's on the
Well, it's
older
newer
side.
compared to mine.
Yeah.
So
It's all relative.
you get to win that you have a newer house.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about buying an older home, buying a newer home?
I think it's funny because it's like whenever the house I lived in originally was built in like 1918,
Oh, wow.
and then moved to the one that was built in 1959. And I used to jokingly tell people I moved to new construction because the difference between a 1918 house and a 1959 house was like crazy. Like this one had sheetrock instead of plaster walls, and you would open that 1918, you'd open up the wall and you would find the tobacco cans and the tins, and it was like
Huh.
there would be studs that were kind of dangling, not really connected to the floor, but they were like the oak that had gotten so difficult or so hard that you couldn't even saw through it. Like they just were like literally like petrified rock. And so it was just sort of funny because it's like everybody has sort of their vision of what a new home is. To me, the 1959 feels like I'm in new construction.
Mhm.
Now, I sell a lot of new construction, and I really like new construction from that standpoint of, I know that I'm handing people something that they get the clock starting right then. Now, the one thing to think about too is that now there have been the builders have had the houses for some time periods now that they weren't. So, some of the houses have been sitting, new homes, but they've been sitting for a year or two. And there's some positives about that. I know a lot of people think that's negatives, but there's positives about that because you still get the 1 year from the builder. And a lot of the things that could go wrong in a house go wrong in that first 2 years. And so that's kind of a cool thing because some of them you're going to get that time period, or when they go to, caulk in the trim and stuff that is over, with the 4 seasons here, we expand and contract. And so that first year, you're kind of waiting to see where things land. And by then they kind of have landed a little bit. So,
Right.
That's kind of an advantage, but that's another important thing to people to really find out when the house was actually built that they're buying. Don't just assume that it's new construction. So it's built last week.
Right.
Yeah. So because that does make a difference.
I think I want to do new construction next. I want to be able to pick out everything. And I would have
I
told
get that.
you
I would, at some point, I'd like to build a house.
10 or 15 years ago, that was not my personality. That would send me over the edge. But now I'm just like,
Carnegie
Elementary. There
oh my
we
God.
go.
Okay, sorry.
If not, you would have woken up about 3 a.m.
Oh my
Carnegie.
gosh. I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. No, I understand what you're saying though, because the thing is, I think it's funny is I've had so many clients through the years, and I mean, I was in design before I sold, and it's like, it's very difficult to implement what is in your brain to what really comes out. And so I think oftentimes that idea that I would like to build something so I get exactly what I want is a misnomer, because you get close to what you want, but it's never quite that same thing. So for me, in some ways, I always think, well, with an older home, I'm a little bit less disappointed because I made it into something really great.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I can understand. Like my house would be difficult in some ways for somebody who had a lot of clothes. I mean, I don't have big closets.
I would have to make a bedroom a closet or something.
I mean, but I have we've done a lot of stuff to make that work.
I love your house.
Yeah.
But you go through so many stages in your life.
And thank you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I love yours.
You go through so many stages in your life that, for instance, we were just looking before Mom moved here at going into more of a patio home idea. Well, now we got a kid that's coming back home to go to OSU Tulsa Med School. So I'm going to have a bustling upstairs
I think
again.
that is really difficult. And then
I don't think we could have done that with a patio home.
Then they get married, then they have grandkids, and you want the grandkids to come and stay with you. And I mean, it is hard to know. I've had a lot of clients through the years that have downsized and then gone back and done something a little bit bigger.
I get that.
Yeah, because sometimes you do what's right for you at that moment, and then you do what's right for you at that moment. So if you have 4 or 5 years where you don't have grandkids, I've had one person go, I don't think my kids will ever get married. And I think if they get married, they won't have kids. Well, They did, and they
Surprise!
did, and now they're like, oh, okay, we got to get, go back to another house. But for the last 10 years, they've lived in something that they really enjoyed, that was real manageable, and what they wanted was something they could turn the key and go away and come back and not have to maintain anything. So, I think there's a lot of advantages to that. But I think it's that lifestyle that you're trying to live. And so if you are somebody who doesn't really want to worry about the, you know, the air conditioner going out, the blah blah blah, and you can afford, there is an advantage to that. There is. You tend to live further out. I mean, so that's, we're not making any new land, so newer construction tends to be either infill, or, which a lot of people really love that, but some people don't want to live in a neighborhood that's that inconsistent. So the newer construction neighborhoods are going to be further out, and they're getting a little further and a little further, and that's true in any city. And so, for people that work in town or do a lot in town, then that's a consideration.
My concept of how far something is
Oh, it's crazy,
has
isn't it?
completely changed, because I remember thinking, who would build a house on, 161st and Harvard or whatever?
Yeah.
And now I'm out there all the time
Yeah.
with, my builder and clients. And
I think it's interesting though too, because it's like when I actually yesterday, I went to yoga yesterday morning, and then we went to eat. So it's downtown, and then we went to eat further downtown, past downtown, and then I kind of drove in all through the Brady area, all through downtown, then over to Sixth in the Pearl District. I mean, I was just kind of driving through and thinking, this is so not the city that I grew up in. It's not the city that I lived in 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, it is changing so quickly, and it's like you have to put up with more traffic. You have to put up with more, you have to wait at restaurants longer than you used to, all those things. But what a cool thing to be a part of, witnessing. Like I think about when I used to go to Dallas as a kid, like 30 some years ago, I would go and just be like, this is the coolest place. They're so ahead of us, and they're so, well, it feels to me a lot like we're like Dallas or Austin was 30 years ago. And so it's kind of cool now to like not have to deal with, because every time I'm in a city like that, I'm like, oh, the traffic, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine showing houses and having to like tell people what time you're going to get there, and
You'd
then
have to have an hour between showings.
No, I mean, that's the thing, that even as far out, like, I do think it's funny when people move here from transfer and we put them out in those far neighborhoods. We're like, you're going to call me in 2 years and you're going to want to come back into town. They're like, no, I'm used to a long commute. And then 2 years later, like, yeah, no, I don't, like, now I've gotten used to it and I don't want to commute that far out. So it is interesting.
Awesome. Well, I always love talking with you. Like,
you too.
It's just really
I
fun.
hope that everybody else does. And if you don't, oh well, we're just going to keep doing it. So
I feel like I learned so much from you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Vice versa. Vice
Yeah.
versa. I just think I think that you and I both are passionate about what we do. And even more importantly, I think we're passionate about the people that we help and we serve, and I think that's really, I think it's a service heart that we're both coming from. And we really, at the end of the day, I mean, we are in business, so do call us because we would like to buy and sell your house. But at the
or
end
help
of the
you
day,
relocate.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's like I want people to do all the things that I didn't do that I should have done a little faster. And if we can help them speed that up, this isn't about follow our perfect path.
Right.
This is more about, let's just be real and just talk about things. And we're the last broadcast, we talked about the difference between wealth and riches. And you know what? I don't think that was ever really explained to me. I mean, my parents did. But I mean, as far as like in general, with just in society, like you really have been sort of taught that those things represent wealth, and they don't. They just don't. And so houses and real estate do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a good handbag and a snazzy pair of shoes, but
as long as you put it in the closet you own.
Exactly. My home is like where my heart is.
Yeah. No, and again, I'm not even a big believer that every single person should own a house. I don't. I mean, I think there's, there's periods in time when you get to be older and retired and you don't want to deal with it and you can just call somebody to come fix it. Awesome. I think that's a great situation. If you're younger and you may be moving cities in a year, or like your son where you're just getting started and you're like having to save money and learn how to save money so you have it, I mean, that's great. But in general, I think it's something to really try for. I do think that in general, it makes so much more sense. It just, and our system is built to benefit people who own property.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is just the truth. And so I think, what is that startling statistic about that the net worth of some of homeowners averages 40 times?
I actually did a social media post on that not
Put
long
that
ago.
in your brain. 40 times.
I'm so glad you came up with that, because I'm like, it was 40 something.
I can't think of elementary schools, but I can think of numbers. No, but think about that. 40 times. That's startling.
Yeah.
And sort of unfair. I mean, it really, but if that's what it is, then get in the game. I mean, like that's, and I think that goes back to like what we've been talking about previous, that it's just an enforced savings, and you're in your building and you're thinking about it as an asset, and you're seeing that it's, I mean, it's really hard to be looking at your bank statement or your mortgage statement at a certain point and then knowing what your valuation is and knowing what you paid for it. And when you start really seeing that, that becomes addictive. I mean, like
it does.
It's really awesome that you can do that. So I think that's really, I think that's our passion. And I think that it's, you know, houses are a vehicle for me to a lot of things. They're a vehicle to having a really great and beautiful life that you spend with people. You know, I've had so many great memories in my house, and you know, it's like your house really is haunted in a good way. I mean, you know,
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's so interesting. And then I just think about like when my best friend comes and stays, and she'll stay sometimes 3 or 4 weeks, and I mean, just how nice that we have like our space, you know, like it's just, it's so great. And same when I go stay with her or I go stay with another friend, you know, like it's really cool. Like even going to other cities, I think that's where the Airbnb thing is such a big thing now, because people kind of want to go and live like people live in the city instead of living like in a hotel. And so I think that's just sort of the same thing. I think for me, I think that's what I like about a house more than an apartment, is I just kind of feel like I'm living in my own organic space instead of like in a hotel kind of thing. So
well, and every time I think of, you know, oh, well, let's just buy a condo, I'm like, and who's going to walk the dog at 3 a.m.? Not me.
Yeah.
I got to have a backyard, even if it's
damn
small.
Dogs, man.
It's
I
their
love
world.
my dogs, but it is like, I mean, you limit your world.
It is their world, and we're just living in it. I think
that's okay, because they're the perfect beings.
Well, on that note, we are going to sign off for today, episode 12. Get real with Jack and Cindy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.